بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today we are going to talk about the main types of the novel. But before that, I am going to ask you some questions about the last lecture. Let's remember our topics in the last lecture. Who can tell me some topics that we have taken in last lecture? Yes. We talked about the emergence of the novel or the English novel, its definition, its features, and its purposes. Now let's have some questions on the last lecture. I will ask you the first question. Complete the following sentence. The length of a novella is, I will give you 3 choices or 4 choices. A, less than 20 or 30 pages. B, between 40 or 50 and 100. This is the second choice. The third one, more than 100. Which one is the right answer? Yes, that's right. The second choice, which is between 40 or 50 and 100. So this is about novella. Another question I will ask you. In the 18th century, which group of people were against the novel? Or we call them anti-novel. The middle class, farmers, or the upper class. Which one of these? We have 3 choices: middle class, upper class, farmers. Which one of these? Yes, that's right, the upper class. Another question: the main reason behind the rise of the novel in the 18th century. Which one of these? Growing number of poets, A. B, growing number of population, or political and social stability. What do you think? Again, growing number of poets, growing number of population, or political and social stability. Which one of these? Yes, that's right, political and social stability. Let's have another question about the last lecture. Also, we can ask, what are the 3 rises in the 18th century according to Ian Watt? What are these 3 rises? Who can tell me the 3 rises? Think of this question. We have talked about 3 rises that, or according to Ian Watt. Yes, the first one, the rise of, yes, the middle class. The second one, the rise of literacy. The third one, the rise of, yes, the rise of the novel. So these are 3 rises in the 18th century according to Ian Watt. Again, we have the rise of the middle class, the rise of literacy, and the rise of the novel. Or we can ask in another way, one rise of these appeared in the 18th century according to Ian Watt. Choose one of these. The rise of agriculture, the rise of drama, or the rise of the middle class. Which one of these? Yes, that's right, the rise of the middle class. So we don't have the other choices, the rise of drama or the rise of agriculture. Another question: what kind of writing is novel? What kind of writing is novel? I will give you 2 choices. The first one, verse or poetic. So we call novel, it is a kind of writing, or it is a poetic writing, or it is a prose writing. Which one of these? Yes, that's right, it is a prose writing. Now let's see today's lecture. Today we are going to talk about the main types of the novel. So we are not going to take all the types of the novel, but we are going to select some types of the novel. Let's see some of these types. These are the main types of the novel. We have the first one, the regional novel. Second, we have the science fiction novel. So we have science fiction. The first one again, a regional novel. The second one, science fiction. The third one, the novel of action, or sometimes we call it action novel. The fourth one, Bildungsroman novel. Fifth, we have the social novel. Also we have metafiction novel. 7, we have faction novel. 8, we have historical novel. 9, picaresque novel. 10, the letter novel. And 11, the gothic novel. So we have 11 types of novel in this lecture. We are going to talk about these novels, or the types of novels. Let's start with brief introduction. In order to approach a novel, it's very important to know its type, or a reader would fail to extract the value and pleasure from this or his reading. Therefore, it is very important to distinguish different types of the novel all over the time. There are many kinds of novels, but these are the essential ones in fiction. So these types are the most important types in novel writing. Again, in order to understand a novel, we have to know its type before we start reading this novel. These types of novels are very well established in the literary traditions of fiction. Some critics may divide novels according to time as classical, traditional. According to time, we have some classifications of novel. The first classification of novels according to time, we have classical or traditional novel, Victorian, which appeared during the Victorian age in the 19th century, and we have in this age great novelists appeared during this age. And we have modern, then we have post-modern in the 20th century and the 21st century. Another division would be according to the novel's topics. Thus, their topics would be colonial. It will talk about colonial issues, romantic, a love story, political. It will talk about politics and rulement in the society, psychological, natural, etc. So according to the topics, we have colonial novels, romantic novels, political novels, psychological novels, and natural novels. Another classification would be related to gender. So we have male or female. For example, there is a feminist novel. A feminist novel which is mainly concerned with the feminine perspectives towards life and society in general. So we have feminist novel according to gender, male or female. We have feminist novel. In the following, there are the general types of the novel. Let's start with the general or the most important types of the novel. The first one, we are going to talk about the regional novel. The regional novel contains a lot of attention on a particular geographical region. A regional novelist writes a number of novels including the same region, so we have the same place in all his novels. So we have a number of novels including the same region, as in the case of Thomas Hardy's Wessex. So we can see this place or this setting according to place we can see Wessex in all Hardy's or almost all his novels. We can see Wessex in his novels. Wessex is used to describe the southwest region of England. Some critics see such regional novels as a target for regional readers, not universal readers. So this is a kind of shortcoming. According to some critics, they see such regional novels as a target for regional readers, not universal readers. They think that it is a shortcoming. The main concerns of such novel are traditions, lifestyle, and communication in a region. Example, we have one example on each type, and especially the first novel in each type. So we are going to take the first novel in each type. For example, in the regional novel, we have Thomas Hardy's The Return of the Native, which is written or was written in 1878. So this is the first regional novel. The second type, we have the science fiction novel. Some critics describe this kind of novel as fantastic fiction. It contains scientific setting which is related to advanced technology and usually set in the future. Science fiction novels, actions and settings are conceivable but not actual. So we are going to talk about, in this science fiction novel, we are going to talk about something in the future or something related to scientific approach in the future. In the Age of Reason, Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, which was written in 1726, was one of the first true science fiction works. Later in the 19th century, H.G. Wells is considered one of the most important authors of science fiction. So we have H.G. Wells, which is considered one of the most important authors of science fiction. His most notable science fiction works include The Time Machine, which was written in 1895, so it is in the 19th century, and The Invisible Man, which was written in 1897. So these types or these examples on science fiction, we have Gulliver's Travels, The Time Machine, and The Invisible Man. 3. We have the novel of action or the action novel. This kind of novel is concerned with what characters do all over the novel and how the action goes on. In this type of novel, there is sometimes a loose plot structure. For example, we have Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, which was written in 1719. In this novel, there is a loose plot structure. We can note that later in the following lectures about this novel. We are going to discuss all the elements and all the features of this novel in the future lectures. So we are going to have a deep analysis of Robinson Crusoe in the future. So we will see this loose plot structure and this type, the novel of action, and the effects of this type on Robinson Crusoe. 4. We have Bildungsroman novel. It's also called novel of education. So we can say novel of education or Bildungsroman novel. This name is related to German, so it's not an English word, Bildungsroman, it is a German. It refers to that novel which follows the development and cultivation of a young protagonist from his childhood through adulthood till his maturity. So we follow the protagonist of this novel during all the stages of his life, from childhood to maturity. The most important features of this kind of novel, we have the most important characteristics or features of this novel. We have the first one, formation of a single main character. So we are going to talk about, if we have a Bildungsroman novel, formation of a single main character, a young man or a young woman. The second feature, individualism. There is a deep outlook towards the private life and thoughts of this character. Individualism is very important in novel in general. Individualism in this type, there is a deep outlook towards the private life and thoughts of this character. This character, as we said, he is the protagonist of the novel, so we are going to see his individualism in this novel. The third one, we have determination. There is a positive attitude towards life. So the protagonist is determined to achieve his goals during this novel. 4. The ideal of humanity, which leads to a full realization of all human potential as the main goal of life. So, thus we have ideal humanity, which leads to a full realization of all human potential as the main goal of life. And we have one example about Bildungsroman. We have film Meester's Apprenticeship, which was written in 1795 by Goethe. It was translated by Thomas Carlyle. It is a novel of education. 5. We have the social novel. It is also known as a social problem novel. It is a reaction against the rapid industrialization and its effects on social, economic, and political issues. So again, it is also known as social problem novel. So this type, again, it is called with another name, either the social novel or the social problem novel. It is a reaction against the rapid industrialization and its effects on social, economic, and political issues. So it's a reaction to industrial life. It is a reflection of the abuses of industry against the poor who gain nothing from the growing economy. So this kind of novel focuses on the social problem, and we have something about industrialization. So we have against industrialization. An example of this kind of novel is Dickens' Oliver Twist, which was written in 1837. Dickens wrote about London life and the poor. And we have another example, A Christmas Carol, which was written in 1843. This is another good example of struggles of working class with their social problems. We can see in this novel the character of Scrooge, and we can see who is the boss in his work and the struggle with working class in his work. 6. We have the metafiction novel. Metafiction. So we have metafiction novel. Who can tell me the meaning of metafiction? We have fiction and we have meta. So it is beyond fiction, or it is simply fiction about fiction. What's the meaning of that? Who can tell me the meaning to write a novel fiction about fiction? So can we have a novel which is written in fiction about fiction? What do you think? Let's see. So it is simply fiction about fiction. It deals with the nature and process of the composition of the novel. So it deals with the art of fiction, we can say it is a kind of criticism inside the novel. It's a kind of showing the artistic elements in the novel. So the author or the novelist is trying to show his ability to write novels. The English father of metafiction, Lawrence Sterne, in his novel Tristram Shandy, which was written in 1760, we can see some of his comments during his writing. We can see that he directs his readers to turn back several pages to read a passage. So he will ask his readers to go back and see the element in his novel, or to see some quotation in order to focus on artistic feature in his novel. So we can see in the novel, please go back several pages, go back to page 122 and see the third paragraph, which focuses on the ironic language of this character. So it's a kind of, yes, directing the readers to sense the artistic flavor in his writing. 7, we have faction novel. What's the meaning of faction? It's not fiction, faction. Yes, we can see this word is formed of two words. Fact and fiction. So we have a coinage of fact and fiction. We take the first syllables from the first word and we take the last one from fiction. So we have faction. So it refers to a novel that is between fact and fiction. It's not real and it's not fiction. Both of them. It's a mixture of real fiction. So it refers to a novel that is between fact and fiction, which deals with real events or people, but taking details from the novelist's imagination, not from the real life. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, a non-fiction, also faction, is called what? Non-fiction. Sometimes we can see another name for this kind. So we have faction or non-fiction. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, a non-fiction novel is a story of actual people and actual events told with the dramatic techniques of a novel. So again, we have, according to Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica, we have what? Actual people and actual events. But we have dramatic techniques of the novel. The American novelist Truman Capote claimed to have invented this genre with his book in Cold Blood. So this is the first novel which is written in faction. It was written in 1965. So it was written in the 20th century. 8, we have the historical novel. It is a novel that sets its events and characters in such a well-defined historical context. It includes convincing detailed description of manners, buildings, etc. So again, we have a difference between historical novel and faction novel. Who can tell me the difference? Look at it again. That sets its events and characters in such a well-defined historical context. We have the context, or the historical context is real. We are going, for example, to talk about Georgian age, Victorian age, or we can take the context from another historical period and we put our characters, our plot, our theme in this setting. It includes convincing detailed description of manners, buildings, etc. It gives a sense of historical authenticity. So it will seem as a real story about life. Example: Sir Walter Scott was a successful British novelist and the greatest single influence on fiction in the 19th century. He established the historical novel through his Waverley novels. He wrote historical novels about Middle Ages and about the Lowlanders and Highlanders. So the historical context is what? Middle Age. So we have historical context, which is the historical age. His most famous novels are Waverley, which was written in 1814, and another one, Antigone, which was written in 1816. There are also some great novels in the 19th century which have historical interests, such as Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, which was written in 1859, and Victor Hugo's Notre Dame de Paris, which was written in 1831. These are other examples of historical novels, but the first one again, we have Waverley and Antigone, which were written by Sir Walter Scott, who was a successful British novelist, and he was the greatest single influence on fiction in the 19th century. The historical novel is neither dead nor dying. So again, the historical novel is neither dead nor dying. It will stay for a long time, since it's a kind of novelistic record in the fiction. It is a story which is set among historical events. Such historical novels recreate the atmosphere of a past period and include actual characters and events from history. So it's a kind of recreation of the past in fiction or in fictional language. 9. We have the picaresque novel. The object of the picaresque novel is to take a central figure and follow his adventures all over the novel. So we have only one character, one protagonist, and we are going to follow this character till the end of the novel. Usually a poor young man lives in a poor circumstances and reaches the top at the end. So at the end, he will achieve his goal. A picaro, who is the protagonist or the main character in the novel, the hero of the picaresque novel, moves or travels from one place to another in order to achieve his interests. Again, the picaresque novel. The object of the picaresque novel is to take a central figure and follow his adventures all over the novel. Usually, a poor young man lives in a poor circumstances and reaches the top at the end. A picaro, the hero of picaresque novel. By the way, picaro is taken from Spanish language, yes, from the Spanish language. So we have picaro, the hero of the picaresque novel, moves or travels from one place to another in order to achieve his interests. He travels from one place to another to achieve his goal. Travel was the chief means of becoming acquainted with the social life of the 18th century. If we go back to the 19th, 18th century, we will sense that it was very difficult to travel from one country or from one continent to another. It was a challenging experience. Success is the chief means nowadays. Nowadays we can sense to be a successful person is a challenge. Travel was a challenge in the 18th and 19th centuries. Few people could travel at that time. Also, success in the present time needs great efforts. Therefore, a man who traveled or succeeded will try to convey his experiences. Novelists make use of these experiences in their novels. You can sense that almost all old novels took travel as a main concern in their novels. Example, we have Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews, which was written in 1742. This novel is considered a picaresque novel. So, as example, we can take Fielding's Joseph Andrews as a picaresque novel. 10. The letter novel, epistolary novel. This kind of novel is written, so we have two names for this novel. We have letter novel or epistolary novel. We have two names. This kind of novel is written in the form of letters from one character or more. So we have, again, this kind of novel is written in the form of letters from one character to another, or from two or more characters to other characters. During the narration of the novel, there is an exchange of letters. For example, we have Richardson's Pamela, which was written in 1740. 11. The Gothic novel. This kind of novel usually contains frightening castles. So it's a frightening novel. Frightening castles, graveyards, and such terrifying places. Again, this kind of novel usually contains frightening castles, graveyards, and such terrifying places. Even the characters in this kind of novel are strange and frightening. It is also full of strange noises, sometimes storms, tension, and suspense. So it is a terrifying novel. We have terrifying places such as graveyards, terrifying castles, and we have also strange characters, terrifying characters, frightening characters, strange noises, sometimes storms. We have tension and suspense in this kind of novel. For example, we have Horace Walpole wrote the first Gothic novel, which is The Castle of Otranto. So as example of Gothic novel, we have The Castle of Otranto, which was written in 1764. Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, which was written in 1818, was a very important Gothic novel. Two examples of Gothic novel, we have The Castle of Otranto and we have Frankenstein. Novels about vampires are also considered Gothic novels. So these novels are terrifying and full of terror, and their actions are terrifying. Verne the Vampire, this is the first, we have to underline this. Verne the Vampire, which was written in 1845, was the first vampire novel, which established the conventions of vampires, where Verne has fangs, leaves wounds on the neck of his victims, and is very powerful. Conclusion: these are some of the novel's types. As it is clear, there is a pioneering novel for each kind of them, which sets the main principles and features of every one of them. It's a kind of setting and establishing the appearance of the main kinds of the novels with their examples. Thank you very much. See you next lecture. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.